Someone's coming, Pa. In the sky the bright stars glittered, on the bank the pale moon shone, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. On my arm a soft hand rested light as ocean foam, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. On my lips a whisper trembled till it dared to come, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. On my life new hopes were dawning, and those hopes have lived and grown, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home. I was seeing Nellie home, and 'twas from Aunt Dinah's quilting party I was seeing Nellie home.
Hi, this is Brian. Anyway, that was very interesting. That's from the great movie Shane, which I saw when I was probably about 18. And went there with a couple friends of mine, and I was overwhelmed by that movie, and I learned a lot from it. "Someone's coming, Pa," said the little boy as Shane rode up to the family farm of a western homesteader. "Shane, come back," called the boy as Shane reluctantly rode away at the end of the film. I don't think we got that on here. I think we might have cut that a little short, but and then he said, "Bye, Shane." And the boy was played by Brenden DeWilde, a childhood friend of my wife and many of her friends, late friend Mary Ellen McCann, Adamo of Torrington and Winston, Connecticut, who knew him when they played together in New York while their fathers were in the Army. They were very young at the time. These are sounds that we all remember, the boy crying to Shane both at the beginning and the end of the movie. Many of us learned from the movie Shane. Shane was a very experienced and very quiet expert who helped the Western farmer and his family in their hour of need, quietly and professionally, because he had the necessary expertise that they did not possess. He was quiet-spoken, didn't show off, and tried to avoid difficult confrontations. But when they came, he faced them and didn't back down. The beginning song, Aunt Dinah's Quilting Party, was used in the film Shane when snippets were sung by Claudette Colbert, the settler's wife, at the beginning of the film. The song is about a quiet, peaceful, but experienced and determined man seeing Nellie home. This song is appropriate tonight, as I will hopefully be discussing and explaining, once again, the purpose of the regular selectmen meeting. I hope I get to it. The selectmen meeting is not meant to be a quilting party. where people sit around in a circle and talk about anything they want, but it's a decision-making meeting. These meetings are held in all businesses, and they all have sort of similar rules. Don't judge these selectmen meetings by those who say the most but accomplish the least. Judge these meetings by those that say the least but accomplish the most. Also in the song, he said that the hopes were growing. Our hopes are growing, and we will succeed. This week I will be featuring the town manager, Keith Roberts, as a special guest today. His picture will be up for most of the program. The reason I'm doing that is because we are finally, in the many years I've been here, since for 5 or 6 years full-time resident, have the town manager running the day-to-day business in the town of Winchester as the CEO, as the charter says he's supposed to do. So I'm going to say thank you, Keith, for coming up to speed so fast. Later I'll show an example of the agenda, and most of the items on the agenda this week were put on by Keith Roberts. One of the selectmen said a few weeks ago, hey, a lot of these items are being put on by the town manager. Well, that's the way it should be. The town manager is running the town, and when he needs help from the selectmen, he'll put items on the agenda, and he'll ask for it, the help, or decisions. So this week I'm going to talk quite a bit about that. So thanks, Keith, for joining our town and getting up to speed so fast and running the town as CEO as you're supposed to be doing. This week's selectmen agenda was a textbook example of a classic progress meeting agenda, but it can still be improved over time. Tonight, if we have enough time, I will explain why this agenda is so good and reflects the positive evolution of our new town management. We will now go quickly through the agenda. I'm going to try to move kind of quickly tonight because I want to get to analyze this selectmen meeting. The agenda, June 19th, is today. The meeting was on the 16th. Today we're going to talk about the selectmen meeting. Comments, notices, budget update, selectmen meeting, meeting comments. I want to talk about the great agenda we had this week and the good points about it, and then I want to talk about how a selectmen meeting should be run. I've done this in the past, prior to the election and after the election, but I see some confusion out there from a very, very small number of people. So I thought I'd repeat it all again, and then maybe people will understand better what the select meeting is and why it's run the way it is. Notices. There are quite a bit of dates coming up here. June 23rd, 2008 is a big day for our town. There will be 3 significant events at the Gilbert School. At 6 p.m., there will be a special Board of Selectmen meeting to discuss fund transfers. At 6:30 p.m., there will be a special town meeting to discuss possibly accept or deny the town of Winchester accepting the generous donation of property at 633 Jewel Road. Sometimes I get ahead of myself here, so. At 7 p.m., the second annual town budget meeting to discuss the second proposal of the 2008-2009 town budget and set a date for the referendum will occur. On July 7th, 2008 at 7 p.m., there will be a special town meeting, as I've said in previous programs, at the Gilbert School. The subject will be the explanation of the 2005 Capital Projects Resolution. The finance director and bond experts will be there to answer questions. The public can ask all the questions they want, providing they're courteous and to the point. And the referendum to vote on the issue will be held on July 12th at the Town Hall P. Francis Hicks Room from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Now remember to make the switch here to the Town Hall on that date, not Gilbert School or Pearson School. And that will be kind of where we're heading on that. This is going to be, I hope, a positive meeting because we're actually came in 50, I can never remember the exact number, $50,000 or so less than we had intended to spend on that bond issue. But some of the money was spent a little differently than it was approved, so we now have to go through this meeting and we have to talk to the taxpayers about it and then go on to a referendum to approve the bond issue. I'm not too familiar with what happens at these kind of meetings because I've never attended one, but we'll find out and you'll see when we get there. Now, just a bit about taxes. Somebody did mention to me this week that their nice wife said to them, why can't Brian be a little more succinct on these budget issues? So this week I decided to just put up a simple chart which shows that it will be 1 plus 1.33 mils or 5.41%. So when you go down there to the town meeting on the 23rd, that's what they'll be talking about. I'm sure it'll be tape recorded by somebody and re-shown over 2 or 3 times during the week or the next following week. So you'll be able to see what happened down there. Usually what happens at these meetings is they're packed by educators, and that's okay. And they don't cut the budget any, although they could. And then they go on to a referendum within a month or so later. The Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday, June 16th, this is what I normally go through after every selectman meeting. I'm going to kind of push this a little bit because I got more to talk about today. Call to order, policy, public comment, agenda items only, non-informational, approval of minutes, policy, boards and commissions, policy, town manager's report, once again, non-policy, as it should be. Bid results for lots 29 through 34 East Wakefield Boulevard, policy, town manager goals and objectives, policy, the audit format for outside agencies, policy, granting an easement for 610 West Wakefield Boulevard, policy, setting date for special meeting and selectmen meeting for fund transfers, policy, donation of property at 643 Jewel Road and to set a date for a special meeting, policy, the Farmington River Watershed Conservation Compact, policy, public comment, information, that's the second public comment where you can say anything you want towards the end of the meeting, unfinished business policy, new business policy, executive session, that's a private meeting, secret, we don't know what goes on in there and we're not supposed to, but the fire department personnel was discussed and Department of Public Works contract negotiations were discussed. At the end of that meeting, action regarding executive session, policy, none was taken. And then adjournment, 18 policy, which is normal at the end of a meeting. So again, red is policy, green is non-policy, gray is informational. Now as far as the votes that were taken, there weren't too many this week, but there was a vote to send, first of all, we still have these 2 outstanding, and I did send a little note to the town manager this week asking, you know, if we're making any progress there, you know, and he probably would just answer me, not bring it up at the meeting. But okay, vote to send out to rebid the property based on the town manager's recommendation. And that was a property that they needed to put out the rebid. I forgot to put the address in here, but the motion was made by Selectman Ham and seconded by Selectman Liskin, and it was unanimous. I've decided to put motions and seconds in here now, so over time, when we do the quarterly reports, we can see who's raising all the issues and who isn't. So that's the first one this time. I'm going to go backwards and do it for all through the minutes and do it for all the previous meetings since the election, and then I'll bring it up to date. And then I hope to include that in the quarterly report for the rest of the year. A 3-member subcommittee was formed consisting of Selectman Perez, Selectman Fracasso, and Selectman Berlinski, and a meeting will take place at a future date to discuss the goals of the town manager. There was no vote taken on that, really, and no decision made, so I don't have any vote count on that. Consensus of the board that outside agencies should put forth an audit. That's kind of a continuation of the existing policy. And the policy before, what the town manager was trying to do is find a better way to handle these outside agency audits. And so far we haven't. He's still looking, and he's been encouraged to look further, but he hasn't found the solution. So until further notice, they'll remain as they have been in the past, as I understand it. Vote to gain comment. There was no vote taken on that. That was a consensus. Vote to gain comment from the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding an easement on property located at 610 West Wakefield Boulevard. That was voted on unanimously, and motion was put forward by Selectman Ham and seconded by Selectman Berlinski. Vote to schedule a special meeting regarding fund transfers to be held on June 23rd, 2008 at 6 p.m. at the Gilbert School. Motion, Selection Ham. Second, Selectman Liskin, unanimous. Vote to schedule a meeting regarding the donation of property at 643 Jewel Road. Motion, Selectman Ham. Second, Selectman Liskin, unanimous. Vote to authorize the mayor, Kenneth Ricasso, to sign the letter of good intent. And that letter of good intent, these are my comments here that I took from the minutes of the meeting. This is a letter of intent to preserve and enhance the protection of our watershed areas and the surrounding of their habitats. So that's very positive. You'll see elsewhere in this talk today that we're also pursuing the development or our estates as well as a town. So that balances nicely. We're always going to be looking at the watershed and protecting it and the surroundings and their habitats, but we're also going to be trying to get revenue in town by growing, adding new taxpayers to the existing taxpayers. That was a motion made by Selectman Liskin, seconded by Selectman Ham, and unanimous vote. Hard to vote against that. The vote to enter executive session at 7:31 p.m. with the town manager, Keith Roberts, and Fire Chief Shopey. Motion, Selectman Ham. Second, Berlinski, unanimous. And that's kind of it for that. So we have red complete, blue in progress, yellow not yet started. So of the whole year, we've got just a couple in progress here from history, and the rest are being worked on one way or the other, or have been completed. Major status, I always put this up. I'm not going to talk much about it. It's the same again. But what's happening now is they are working on the town manager's goals and objectives and his review, 6-monthly review, and then a yearly review. So I hope some of this gets incorporated into that whole process. I'll talk a bit about more of that when we get to the meeting comments. So for total policy, very good. This was an excellent meeting. Everything was policy, except for the town manager. It was not supposed to be. So it's 159 to 14, 92%. Thank you, everybody. It was a very, it was a very professional meeting, and it was a very, what I would call efficient meeting. Okay, it's very important. We'll talk a bit more about that later in the program. Meeting businesslike. Yes, this was very businesslike. I put this in because in the past we've had a history of non-businesslike meetings, but this was businesslike. So 2 or 3 meetings ago we had one that wasn't, but 15 to 1. Very, very good. Thank you for that, Selectmen. The meeting lasted about 31 minutes. And then there was like a 40-minute executive session that I didn't sit through. I mean, we can't see that. So, so it was a very, very efficient and professional meeting. There's no reason why they can't be both. Meeting comments. These are my normal meeting comments. The meeting was very professional and very efficient. It lasted about 33 minutes, plus a 40-minute executive session kindly placed next to last on the agenda. I've always been a proponent of putting these things next to last, if not last, on the agenda, so everybody doesn't have to sit through them. Because if you sit there for an hour waiting for people to get out of the executive session, and then usually when they get out, they say, there is no action required, and then everybody goes home. So I just soon see that placed at the end so everybody doesn't have to wait around for an hour or a half an hour or 15 minutes or whatever it is while they have an executive session. They can't even talk about it anyway, so it's really not good. Now, sometimes I will come out of an executive session and make a decision, raise a motion, but that's not often. The meeting was helped a great deal by the excellent functional agenda and all of the preparation in advance by the town manager, his direct reports, and the selectmen that did their homework prior to the meeting. When I talk about the meeting later, you're going to find, as I always say, almost all the work needs to be done outside the meeting, not during the meeting. On a very stormy night, we got all our, over the last week or so when we were in Maine and down here, we got all our phones knocked out, and we got plenty of phones, and we got all our TVs knocked out, plenty of cable connections as well. So this week we got those cleaned up, and on the night of this meeting, that was also a very stormy night, and there wasn't any public comment at the 25-minute section at the beginning of the meeting, preserved for agenda items only. Nobody got up to speak. I don't even think anyone was in the audience. There were probably 2 or 3 people in the audience, one of whom did get up to speak at the second public comment. At the regular public comment session, towards the end of the meeting, the chairman of the Democratic Party, James Pettit, turn a couple pages here to catch up, said that his party supports the new proposed 5.41% increase, 1.33 mil budget, and he encouraged others to do so. Matter of fact, I think Democratic Party even put out a press release about that. I'd like to thank them for that. The previous budget, I didn't think they did that, support that budget, but this one they support, and they're encouraging other people to do the same. So not everybody has spoken yet on what they do. I imagine the Republicans support the budget. I know the Democrats do now. Whether or not the Taxpayer Association does or the Independent Party, I haven't heard, or any other group in town. But we thank you, James Pettit, for coming to the meeting, staying until the public comment, and speaking very positively and succinctly about your party's decision. If you watch the rerun on Channel 13 on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., you will see a very good meeting. Unfortunately, it includes a bit of bicycle shedding. You all know what that is. I've talked about that enough on this program. And unnecessary attempts to micromanage the town manager. And now I'm getting feedback from people around town that says, Brian, you don't need to mention anymore who does these things, because we can see it for ourselves. We know who's doing this. So whichever party it's from, people will notice. So let's try to reduce the bicycle shedding and the micromanagement of the town manager. Selectman David Capabianca was excused from the meeting due to some planned surgery, but will return soon. We all wish him well. There were no selectman appointments to the major boards and commissions, and unless someone resigns, none are due until June. In June, this will be members of the Senior Citizens Commission. There's a whole bunch of them, 5 or 6 of them, that are up for renewal, or if they don't want to renew, or for one reason or another, the selectmen choose someone else, then that'll happen. But if you are interested in being on the Senior Citizens Commission, let the town manager or a selectman know, accompanied by a letter of interest. They have some kind of a letter that you're supposed to fill out and say, I'm interested in either renewing or joining this commission. So I guess you can get that from the town manager's secretary or from any of the selectmen. A goals and objective plan used the last couple of years for the town manager evaluation was distributed to the town manager and the selectmen in the information packet. A meeting has been set up to review this form. I have a copy of this form. I went to the town manager's secretary and got it. Everything in the information packet is public information. I'll mention that later in the program. But I went and got a copy of this form, and you, too, if interested, can get one by contacting the town manager's office. Despite positive feedback from the few of the selectmen at the meeting on Monday, in my opinion, it needs work, a lot of work, to make it more inclusive, balanced, and results-oriented. I didn't see too much results orientation in it, and that should be 99% of what's in there. As I said earlier, a committee of 3 selectmen was formed to prepare the review, the form, and establish goals with the town manager, and they said that would happen in 7 to 10 days, and I think they'll try to organize a meeting at 6 o'clock when they do that. That's positive. It was requested by the town manager a few meetings ago, and things have been set in motion to get that going. Again, I think it needs a lot of work, and we need to do it more like a business approach than an education or bureaucratic approach, which I kind of read into it when I read it. Get a copy for yourself. See what you think, especially if you have a business background. Okay, let's see. Despite positive feedback from the few of the selectmen, I already said that, a committee of, I already said that, so I got to move on here. Okay, in 7 to 10 days. Eventually, the selectmen will evaluate the town manager's performance. I think they're due to do that after 6 months, when he's in a job 6 months, and then probably again at the end of a year. An attempt was made to improve the audit report format for outside agencies. For example, the Friends of Main Street. That's just one example. There are other outside agencies. The town manager recommended to leave the existing procedure in place for many reasons. The selectmen agreed. The selectmen were asked to consider the use of an easement by property at 610 West Wakefield Boulevard that the Public Works Director has no problem with, according to the meeting. The selectmen decided, after considerable, unnecessary, in my opinion, discussion, that this is a good example of bicycle shedding. When you watch it on Saturday morning, you'll see a very good example of bicycle shedding. To ask planning and zoning for review for an existing town ordinance. The issue will then come back to the selectmen for a decision. This could have been handled in a couple of minutes, but there was some history lesson there and some pontificating, so it lasted, as far as I'm concerned, way too long. Toward the end of each fiscal year, I think it's the last 3 months. I didn't get a chance to look at the charter before this meeting, but the last 3 months or so, I think it is, the selectmen are allowed to transfer funds recommended by the town manager from one line item to another and one town department to another. So they're not allowed to do this too much during the year, but in the last 3 months they get a little more latitude from the charter. So the town, a special meeting was set up for June 23rd, 2008 at Gilbert School at 6 p.m. to accomplish this for the 2007-2008 fiscal year. A list will be prepared by the town manager. The town will discuss and possibly vote on the 643 Jewel Road donation at a town meeting on June 23rd, 2008 at the Gilbert School. Please show up and vote yes if you can. No if you don't want to vote yes. There are many advantages as the town owns the surrounding property, and there may be a possibility of getting it all on the tax rolls. Taking the property we own, adding this piece of property to it, and getting it on the tax rolls, which we all know we need. As you know, we need all the help we can get with these tax rolls. We need to get more and more onto the tax rolls. It was unanimously agreed that a letter of intent be sent regarding the Farmington Valley Conservation Compact. Well, I got this goofed up too. But anyway, that was done, and the mayor is going to sign that and send off that letter of intent. that I had mentioned earlier in the program. And then again at the second public comment, the Democratic Party's comments on the budget was included in the final public comment by Jim Pettit. There was nothing under unfinished business or new business and no action required after the executive session. Now I'm going to do the town manager's report and kind of get through that as quickly as I can. Town manager's report doesn't include any action items. The town manager's report was informational and was meant to augment his report that he put in the informational package, and to the selectmen, including in the information package, his verbal comments, including the following items. Some comments concerning Soldiers Monument town business. He met with the Soldiers Monument people about, I think, some fund transfers or something like that. But it was town business. I don't know exactly what it was all about. His involvement with the concept for a possible Aurora Estates compromise. I think this is the most important thing he said in that in his the report. Possible a concept for a possible Aurora Estates compromise suggested by the town planner Charles Carno. In addition to the town manager and planner, the developer and the attorneys for both parties, I'm pretty sure of that, I'm not positive, but I think both parties had attorneys there, attended the meeting with the town manager. Involvement with the firemen and the motocross event, there is some glitch there that they're working on resolving to get that squared away so they can have their motocross event. There was a discussion with the United States Department of Agriculture. This is a little carryover from when Bruce Grezik was town manager. Mr. John Stanson of USDA and the Superintendent of Public Works concerning water and sewer for funds for downtown. You know, we want to clean up the downtown over the next 5 to 15 years, and they need to seek funds. And there may be some funds available there to get started. That's very important. A productive tour and business discussion visit to Whiting Mills on Whiting Street. He went down there and he got a tour and he talked to the manager, and that was very positive. He was also at a meeting working with a Cradle to Classroom. That's a group. He was attempting, and they were attempting to find office space for their preschool education. This is prior to kindergarten, preschool, and they need space for that. So he's working with them on that. Business discussions with water and sewer officials he was having, and satisfactory discussions with the fire chief about concerns stated about the past budget process, continued discussions with municipal employees, health insurance plan, MEHIP, people about possible economic health plans that may satisfy our needs. We're always looking for better health plans that can give as much or more to our people for less or equal money. So they're looking into that, have been for quite a while, but he did mention that in his report. Continued involvement in various union negotiations. He's still working with various parts of the town employees on union negotiations, and they go in discuss these behind closed doors, so you never quite know where they stand or when they'll be finished. But it's positive, I'm sure. The town manager was very satisfied with the town's reaction to the recent storm events, including CLMP's excellent response. Thanks to all for another job well done. I went out early, 3 in the morning, a few of those nights when they had the storms, and I can tell you, there was a lot of damage, a lot of trees down, a lot of dirt moved. And one of my neighbors had almost his whole front bank washed out onto the road, and he was out there first thing in the morning with all kinds of machinery, and he cleaned it up within a matter of hours, and very, very conscientious, and nobody had to turn him in. He got to it before he could be turned in. So I'm very happy to see that. The town manager was very satisfied with that, and let's hope it continues that way. Now, there has been some storm damage done to the skateboard park. The town manager says the damage can be repaired with existing funds, and he's going to try to make sure that proper signs remain up there so nobody will get hurt. There was some discussion about the town of Barkhamsted connecting to our existing sewer plant. We've heard this before, and possibly providing much needed revenue in the future. That was discussed at this meeting. Was a question asked by the selectmen. And the town manager is working with the Water and Sewer Commission. By the way, they are working there. The town manager is working with his Water and Sewer Commission chairman and others on this opportunity, as Barkhamsted is searching for the appropriate funding via grants and private investment. Now I'm going to talk about the Board of Selectmen June 16th agenda. I'm going to do this kind of quickly because I got another paper here I want to go over. I want to show you why I think there's such an excellent agenda, and then I'll talk a bit about how a selectmen meeting, which is basically a decision-making meeting, should be run. Board of Selectmen agenda, June 16th, 2008. I personally went in and congratulated the town manager and some of the selectmen for this effort, because it was wonderful. This is just saying that was the agenda. That was on the front of the agenda. So item 1 was call to order. Number 2 was public comment on agenda items only. Good to have that so people can comment on the agenda items that will be on the agenda that night. As long as they're succinct and to the point, they'll be appreciated. They can't ramble and talk about any subject they want. They have to stick to the agenda items. Number 3, approval of previous meeting minutes. That always has to happen. Boards and commissions, that has to happen. It doesn't happen every month that there's somebody there. Liaison reports. Okay, those are kind of the normal things they do at every meeting. And now we get to the things that are put onto the agenda by people. Item 1, town manager's report. I won't go through it all again because I already did, but that was put onto the agenda by the town manager. Number 2, discussion, possible action, item number 7, discussion, possible action regarding the town manager's goals and objectives. Did I get these out of order here? No, discussion, possible action regarding the town manager's goals and objectives, put on by the town manager. Granting an easement at 610 West Wakefield Boulevard, put on by the town manager, after doing work with his direct reports and selectmen and everybody else during the week. Item number 11, discussion, possible action regarding donation of property at 643 Jewel Road, set the date for a special town meeting requested by the town manager. The man who's running, the CEO of our town, Winston, the man who's running the day-to-day business and week-to-week and month-to-month and year-to-year business for us. The next one was the Conservation Compact, put on by Mayor Fracasso. That was, he asked for permission from the selectmen to, he's the only one who could do this, I guess, to sign the this Conservation Compact. I guess he was asked by the Litchfield Hills group of elected officials, and they did that. They agreed it. The next one was public comment. Again, we had 3 people speak. I thought one of them was excellent. That was Jim Pettit. Public comment there. Then there was unfinished business, new business. Nothing came up under either of these categories this time. And the way you can tell it's a pretty good meeting is nothing really should come up under those categories unless it's an emergency. They should be on the agenda, placed on there by the town manager or one of the selectmen. And the selectmen only put them on there under certain circumstances, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And then there was the executive session, which was asked for by, it was for fire department personnel and I think the Public Works, and Department of Public Works, put on by the town manager. Town manager put these on as well as all the other ones. Discussion possible action regarding executive session. Well, there was no action regarding executive session. It lasted about 40 minutes, and when they came out of it, they said there's no action, so that was the end of the meeting. And item 18 was the adjournment. So you can see here, this is a wonderful agenda. Everything was put on by either the town manager, who's running the business, asking for policy and or finance board decisions, or special meetings with the town voters to get things approved, and getting help from the selectmen. So I thought that was excellent. It's a textbook example. It can be improved, however, and I will talk a bit about more in the future. I always thought it would be better if we could have the agenda for the meeting be divided into categories. Number 1, revenue. Number 2, cost savings. Number 3, taxes. Management of taxes for next year. What are we doing to manage that? And number 3, probably expediting the solution for all else. And then, there could be other categories too. But that's where I would think will be a little bit of an improvement on this. Not saying it'll be done. Not everybody might agree with me. But if I were running the meeting, that's what I would do. Now, what is the regular Board of Selectmen? Don't confuse the regular Board of Selectmen with other Board of Selectmen meetings, which I'll talk about in a minute. The regular Board of Selectmen meeting meets every 2 weeks, except once in a while. There's an exception. If there's a holiday or some other emergency, then they might not meet. But number 1, this happens throughout the world in business. And it happens in business much differently than it happens in education institutions, and it happens in business much differently than it happens in bureaucracies of all sizes, shapes, especially huge bureaucracies like a federal and state government or telephone companies, large telephone companies, things like that. So people that are used to working in that environment aren't used to this kind of approach as much. But number 1, it's a decision-making meeting to expedite the solution to problems, to keep things moving, to get things done to a specific date, on time, to everybody's satisfaction. It's a decision-making meeting. What it's not is, it's not a meeting, well, first of all, meetings are conducted using Robert's Rules of Order by charter. The charter says they must use Robert's Rules of Order, and they try to do that wherever they can. What this meeting is not, it's not a working meeting or an educational meeting. And I didn't write it here, but it's not a political meeting. And it's not to talk about history. And it's not to talk about things that aren't on the agenda, unless they're brought up under new business or something like that. So they must be succinct, and they must be worth talking about. Is not to show anybody's knowledge and their history and how much they know. Remember I said in the beginning of the meeting, watch for people who speak less and accomplish a lot, and don't be fooled by people who speak a lot and accomplish little. So not working for educational meetings, this must be accomplished in special or normal separate meetings. People can have a meeting, they can get the packet, they can get information from the town, almost everything is public information, and they can go over that. The town manager is the CEO by charter. Read it in the charter. You can get a copy in the town clerk's office at the town hall. He runs the day-to-day business without micromanagement. That's also in the charter. There can be no micromanagement by the selectmen. So we still have some of that, and it's getting reduced, and it's a lot less than it was a year ago, but we still have some work to do in that area. The town manager puts actions on the agenda when policy decisions from the selectmen, remember they're in charge of policy, or finance board decisions or advice on either of those categories are needed. Now preferably this is usually done outside the meeting. During the week, you got 2 weeks to talk to each other outside the meeting. So there's no excuse for having to wait to the meeting to talk to people. They should do it outside the meeting in the 2 weeks preceding the meeting. And if they can't do that, then they should put it on the agenda for the following meeting. So that's very important. The selectmen by charter are responsible for policy creation, policy decisions, and finance board decisions, and the appointment of major commission members when necessary. That's like the planning and zoning, inland wetlands, and the zoning board of appeals, and I don't exactly know all of them. There's some that they're not responsible for, like the economic development commission, the town manager is, but it's clearly spelled out in the charter who's responsible for what here, and they have to stay within their own area of expertise and charter. All of this must be done within the confines of the charter. So it's very important to read and understand the charter if you want to try to understand these meetings. If you don't understand the charter, then you will never understand how a selectmen meeting should be run. The town voters must be involved in some selectmen decision. That's what the town meetings are about, and these special meetings with to agree to sale of property and to agree taxes and things like that. The town voters must be involved in some selectmen decisions within the confines of the charter. The charter again explains exactly what the voters should be involved in and what they shouldn't be involved in, and what the selectmen can do without the approval of the town voters, and what they can't do. So that's very important. The packet is sent to all participants in advance. They all get this information package before the meeting. There was some confusion about how fast they got it. That seems to have been straightened out. I talked to the secretary of the town manager today, and she said it was very much more smoothly last week, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the meeting went so smoothly. So the packet is sent to all participants in advance, so all the selectmen and town manager and anybody participating in the meeting knows exactly what's in the packet. They can peruse it in advance. They can call each other on the phone. They can have a special meeting with each other. They can meet in person. They can do whatever they want to get prepared for the meeting on Monday. According to the agenda policy, this is done and is available to the public. You can go and get a copy of this packet. I do quite frequently go down and get a copy of the packet to see what was in there, and so I have a better understanding of what's going on. Brief questions of clarity are allowed during the meeting if pertinent. So when people ask questions in a select meeting, they should be very pertinent, and they should be for clarification reasons. If someday I get a chance, I'll show you a Torrington meeting, which is run very efficiently and very effectively, and much different than most of our meetings. So that would be a good example for you. Or if not, you can go down and see one for yourself. They're on Monday evenings, the same time that our select meeting's on. So brief questions of clarity are allowed during the meeting if pertinent to the subject and not too time-consuming. Brevity is the answer here. That's one of the reasons why people like Shakespeare and the great poets are thought so much about. They say an awful lot in a few words, and that's very important. And that's one of the reasons I used Shane as an example tonight, because Shane exhibited all the qualities that these selectmen should possess. And he was very quiet, he knew his stuff, and when he had to do things, he did things, and he usually did the right thing for the benefit of others, not for the benefit of himself. Participants should be courteous and professional to each other during the meeting. Participants should not be pandering to the newspapers. A lot of people have told me that part of our problem here is that when we have public meetings like ours that are on TV, that we get people pandering to the TV. And speaking, you can actually see the selectmen turn and look to the TV camera, or turn and look to the people in the audience for support during the meeting. Like, hey, look at me, I'm making a point in our favor. Well, we shouldn't have that in these meetings. So try not to pander to the newspapers, the TV camera, or the audience during the meeting. The meeting is for the selectmen and the town manager and any of their invited guests to make decisions and keep the town moving according to the prescribed plan that they have for success. The public has a right to speak during the comment sessions only. They can speak during either the public comment, but they do not have the right to speak. And sometimes the selectmen bend over backwards and they let somebody speak. Now I'm talking about the regular selectmen meeting, bi-weekly one. There are other select meetings where they are allowed to speak, and there is an exchange of information. For example, the public yearly town budget meeting, and there are other meetings like that too, where public hearings and things where they can exchange information. The public has the right to speak during the public comment sessions only. Special select meetings are called for specific reasons, and courteous input from the public during the meeting is often allowed. So sometimes they will allow the public to make comments. Somebody might raise their hand and say, I'd like to ask something, and then they'd say, concerning what? And the people say what it's concerning, and if they think it's worthwhile, they will say, okay, go ahead and say it. But normally, they prefer to keep it all to the public comment section, because they need to get this work done. And now, why is it better to have short, efficient meetings? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is these people work all day. They have businesses to run. They also work at night and on weekends and with the town business. So they don't have much time to spare around a quilting table. What they need to do is make decisions, keep the town moving, and if there is any extra time, spend it on the most important items for getting the town balanced, profitable, and all the wants and needs satisfied. So executive sessions are also held about sensitive subjects, and the public is not allowed, and the participants cannot discuss those deliberations with the public. That's not allowed. So even if you ask them, you probably shouldn't even ask them, because you put them in a very difficult, embarrassing situation, so they can't do that. The selectmen are also allowed to place items on the agenda for areas of their responsibility, and all action items are accompanied by informational material supplied in the biweekly information packet. The TM puts actions on the agenda when policy decisions or finance board decisions or advice are needed. The selectmen by charter are responsible for the policy, the financial board stuff, and dealing with the voters in these town budget meetings. They also deal with the manager's direct reports in the town budget meetings. So that's kind of the way the meeting should be run. Now, remember, I'm only talking here about the regular select meeting, biweekly select meeting. There are special meetings of all kinds that are run a little differently, and some of them actually have moderators, like the yearly annual town budget meeting, and these moderators are chosen by the selectmen, nominated and chosen by the selectmen, and they're not always the same person from year to year and time to time. So it looks to me like we're getting a little toward the end here now. I don't know, how much time have I got left here? Okay, I got about 5 minutes. So what I think I will talk about is, during the last 5 minutes, is try to emphasize to you how important it is to vote. I sound like a broken record. I know everybody said that since you were a kid, and was no kindergarten when I was young, but since first grade. Nowadays, I guess they do it in preschool, but the right to vote is very, very important in our country, and you need to vote. And you need to look at your own personal situation, and you need to look at the situation of others. So I encourage everybody to try to attend all 3 meetings on Monday. They start at 6 o'clock. See how your town operates. See how the selectmen deal with the public. See how the public deals with the selectmen. The public does bring guests like their children, their nieces and nephews, their mother and father, their aunt and uncle, people that are in town, to see how these meetings, how a democratic government is managed and run. And I think it's very important that everybody put it on their calendar, try to get to the meeting. You're allowed to speak at the meeting. When you get to the meeting, you can write down your name on a list of speakers, and I think you're allowed 2 or 3 minutes or whatever, and they will take a list of anybody who wants to speak. They're not going to say you cannot speak because we don't have enough time. Now, there are some Robert's rules that if certain things occur according to Robert's Rules of Order, then they have to stop all these conversations and they have to get on with votes. So you may not get to speak under certain circumstances. And then once the list of speakers is finished, then they say, does anybody else want to speak? And if anybody else wants to speak, even if somebody's already spoken once, they can get up and rebut somebody, or they can say something new, and they can discuss things. And at the budget meeting, they can actually reduce the budget. So maybe if they have enough people there and enough support so they can win a vote, then they will attempt to reduce the budget before it goes to referendum. Now, whether that will happen or not, I do not know. It depends on how many people show up from any particular faction. For example, if all people from the education community, students that can vote, probably aren't many of those, but their moms and dads, their grandmother and grandfather, all the teachers, all the people who work in the school system, and they think this budget is advantageous, then they'll probably get as many people as they can to this meeting to vote yes in favor of the budget and to vote no in favor of any cuts to the budget, especially if they think the cuts may affect their ability to run the school system. Now, there are other people that go there that try to cut the budget. So you say perhaps the Taxpayers Association or one of the political parties might go there, and if they have enough support at the meeting, then perhaps they can cut the budget. I've never been to a meeting yet where the budget is cut. I mean, usually it's the people who want the budget to succeed and pass will round up enough people to make sure they dominate the meeting. And if a vote is taken, they will vote in favor of the budget. It will go to referendum, where sometimes it'll get turned down, sometimes it will get passed, and then back we go through the cycle again. Now, I personally think that this budget has a pretty good chance of passing because a lot of it is the work on the OCR stuff for Pearson. It'll also be in there for next year and the following year if approved this year. And also in there is some money, I think it's $250,000 or so, for the 205 bond package, you know, the fixing the roads and all the things they did with the 205 bond package. So I think this has a good chance of passing. Can't guarantee anything. You never know what's going to happen between now and then. I haven't seen many signs up that say vote no. I know at least two of the political parties want to vote yes, and they may or may not be able to influence their own kind. Sometimes people say they're going to vote yes, and then the individuals go out and vote no for one good reason or another good reason. So you never know what's going to happen until the thing is over. So with that, I'm going to say this has been a wonderful night for me because of the meeting this week. I looked 2 days in a row in the paper. There wasn't a mention of this meeting in either paper. I was tickled pink to see it. And if there was any mention, it should have been positive. So thanks, everybody, for that, all the selectmen and everybody. Let's make it a little better. Let's squeeze a little tighter. And let's get as professional and as efficient as we can be and get as much work done because there's too much time needed to get work done. And there is no time needed for anything that doesn't help us move forward on a critical path. Good evening. It's past my bedtime. There's the meeting on Monday. Everybody go at 6 p.m. and stay there until it's over. And I'll see you there. Thank you.